Hey, are you fed up with boring conversations at family gatherings and you want to have more intentional conversation with your parents or your kids this season? Stick around. I'm going to give you some practical tips and some prompts on how you can lead better conversations around the table and at your home during this holiday season. Hey, welcome back to the Something New Show. I'm your host, Jordan Linscombe, and today we're going to dive into an important topic, and that's how to have better conversations with the different generations in your family, especially around the holidays as you're gathering together in the coming weeks. And so, the importance of passing on stories, the importance of passing on culture within your family is something that's really been on our mind lately. So, we're going to dive into why that matters. I'm going to give you some really practical tips and practical prompts on how to do that better and lead better conversations. So we're going to jump right in. Mindy and I have really been thinking about the importance of legacy lately. We had a great gathering over the Thanksgiving holiday where our four parents were able to join us and our four kids and have some time away. And during that time, it's easy to just get in and kind of go through the motions and have time together. But the challenge and the fun thing is, how do I lead really intentional conversations? How do you facilitate and draw out the beauty and the wisdom of an older generation? One, to pass on stories and to pass on reminders to you, but also, especially if you have kids, to pass on to the third generation of those grandkids or even a fourth generation of great grandkids. And so today, as we jump into this, I recognize some people, you may not have the relationship you want with your parents or your kids or your relationships, but you could be the person who starts that and makes a change and creates better conversation at family gatherings. So as we look at this today, we've talked about this before on the show that if you want to kill a culture, one of the main things you can do is kill and take out the chief storyteller, have them just stop telling stories. In our culture, it's so easy for folks to get around a family gathering. You can talk about the latest NFL team or this game or that and all these things. And there's a time and a place for that. That's fine. Okay, I love football and other things. However, how can we be more intentional when we have those really rare moments where different generations are together in the home, around the fire, around the tree, around a meal, so that we just don't go through the motions and kind of drag things out and look back and say, man, we really missed some beautiful opportunities. And I think that it's very important for the next generation to have even clearer and stronger identity, to have even clearer memories, to have even clearer confidence in who they are, where they've come from, and where they're going as a family to carry on legacy. Last week, Mindy and I had hosted an optional legacy workshop for some of our team. It's a really beautiful thing. We had 7 couples come out. Our friend Brandon Schaefer facilitated a beautiful experience for us. We're going to have him on the show sometime here in the future. And we talked about what does it mean to really look at having a mission, a vision, a value statement for your family. Okay, so we'll dive into that more with him some other time. But as we did this, it just got me thinking so much about the experiences I had with my grandparents and how the stories they shared, how the things that they talked about shaped aspects of our family. And so I'm just reflecting on, a couple of moments with my dad's dad. His name was Jordan Linscombe. And I remember the storytelling from him. I remember road trips from him. My folks did work in Mexico when I was a child. So me and my brother and my grandfather were in the back seat for this hundreds of miles drive in the middle of nowhere. No, hardly anybody would know where these places are. But those were unforgettable memories with Jordan Linscombe because he started telling stories about his childhood. He started telling stories about some of the mischief he did, and those were unforgettable moments. But he told stories about how he got into his early years of his career and work and how he figured things out along the way. I also remember things from my mom's side of the family. With that, my mom's mom, who's still alive, she's my one remaining grandparent. She's over 95. She would always host. I grew up in Louisiana, so she would host a gumbo dinner on Christmas Eve. She did that every day of her life until she could no longer sustain doing that at her home. But in those moments, we heard stories. We heard some of them for the 17th time. We heard some of the same jokes. We heard some of the same elements and things about extended family and relatives. But it was impacting and grounding for me because it helped me shape, where did we come from? What are we about? And the beautiful thing is we've been able to take that into my parents' generation and create our own new memories. And then also into me and Mindy's generation and passing things on to our kids and how we create new traditions and pass on the stories of our ancestors, but also new stories and things that we are creating today. So a couple of things, you know, there's data coming out more and more about the health benefits of getting different generations of people together and why that's important to be intentional about it. A recent study in the gerontologist found that grandparents who have a close relationship with their grandchildren experience lower rates of depression and better mental health. So in other words, like spending time with younger generations helps keep grandparents mentally sharp by engaging them in active conversation, problem solving, and activities. It just brings more joy in their life, okay? Another study found that grandparents who care for or spend quality time with their grandchildren tend to live longer with reduced risk of social isolation. So it's really a two-way street, friends. The grandparents get more joy and purpose out of this and create some great memories, and then the kids can get the wisdom, love, and deeper rooting in their life by spending that time together. So if you are in that sandwich generation, okay, Mindy and I are in that to an extent where you are helping facilitate healthy conversations with your parents, okay, regardless of their health or their condition or how active they are. But then you're also helping kids at home. You're in a really, it can be tough at times, but you're also in a really beautiful spot in life where you can help bridge generational connections. You can bridge the gap and make sure some beautiful memories happen and those key stories are passed on. So as you do this, let's jump into some pragmatics, okay? I want you to think about in advance, how can you set up some intentional moments at the table, the fireplace, or the Christmas tree, and consider asking questions like this. And when you set it up, it helps to give you, like, if you're in the middle, it helps to give the older generation, a little bit of a heads up, okay? You flow with your folks and how you know them, but consider asking questions like, hey, what was life like when you were my age? What's one piece of advice you would give a younger generation? Or what's the funniest family member you have? Those are pretty easy layups, right? It's pretty simple things. One thing to consider as well, too, as you do this is plan specific times to sit together, okay? So this could be during meals, while people are cooking. Try to have your devices put away. Like, be fully present, because these are precious moments. But when you use those conversation starters, you can really spark some engaging conversation. Here's another one, like, hey, what's a family tradition you hope we never lose? Most grandparents or folks would probably jump at the opportunity to clarify that, right? And pass on a story or pass on one that they're continuing to try to live out, right? Another way you could do this and you set up the moment is like have things like making a family recipe together in the kitchen, working on a puzzle, and make it so that it doesn't feel as awkward. There's an activity for people to do as they share stories, or even playing like a simple board game, all right? That can allow the conversation to be lighthearted and to flow and other things. But if you are going to kind of start this and prompt your parents or the grandparents in the family to start sharing things, give them a heads up, but also it doesn't hurt to like cut them off at a certain point and say, okay, everybody, now it's time to set up the meal or grab your plates, and you can ask more to grandma and grandpa, okay? Kind of try to leave your children or the grandchildren wanting to hear more. Find out ways to like leave an eager anticipation, almost like a movie trailer. Like they heard some, but they want to continue to get more of the conversation from the oldest generation in your family, okay? And so there's a really powerful saying that when an elder dies, a library burns to the ground. But I want you to think about this. In your family, that doesn't have to be the case. Like the library might burn, but the stories can live on. That's something that we and our friend Brandon were talking about last week. You can really help those stories live on if you are intentional, okay? It can just take a couple of generations or two, and then all these beautiful memories, all these beautiful aspects of identity, aspects of confidence, aspects of the challenges and things that people had to overcome can disappear if you're not intentional to facilitate these stories passing on, okay? And so just another practical thing, if you haven't already, find time to record your grandparents or your parents and really map out some questions to ask them from their earliest childhood memories through their young adult life and their career and their later seasons of life, and really draw out some of the key facts, key data, key stories, key memories that they have. Now, this is as simple as you could pull out a tripod, get your phone going, or you can even get a laptop going, make sure they feel comfortable, set, and then get that stuff stored in the cloud. So those memories can be treasured, they can be handed on to different generations, and they're well protected. Now, a fun thing is my dad did this back in the day with his father, Orrin. So my dad, Russell, got out the VHS like recorder, like the old style in the 90s with the dads. He put it on the tripod, and he started asking Jordan Linscombe about like earliest memories through all the different things. We still have the tape. I actually want to get it out and watch it with our kids really soon because it's powerful. It's interesting. And you hear these things that didn't naturally come out in conversation all the time, right? The fun thing with my grandfather is he also just diverted every conversation about 5 to 10 seconds into talking about work projects because he loved to work, okay? And he would share about his early childhood. And then, he had it rough, folks. Like, by the time he was in the 8th grade, both of his parents had died. He was trying to survive living with aunts and uncles, literally picking cotton in cotton fields, was an orphan in essence and trying to make money, try to survive as like a 13-year-old, et cetera. He got married at age 18. Just to give you like some of his context, my grandmother was 16. It was a different day and age, right? And so those stories start getting drawn out. But every time my dad asked him something, then my grandfather would correlate it to the work project that he was doing at that time or at that season of life or in that year. But then the more I listen to it, like you just really hear how he struggled at first. And he was driving trucks between Lafayette and New Orleans, Louisiana and back, or Crowley, where some of my relatives grew up. And in that, you just get a better picture of the story. Like, it wasn't always easy, okay? And then I also heard some clear moments of, like, in his faith journey and in his decisions of, like, man, I'm going to stop doing some of these habits in my life. He put away some bad habits that helped him kind of grow up and realize he had a family to take care of. He had my uncle really early on, and from there, 3 sons total. And so what I got to see through his storytelling was he drew the line in the sand at one point and said, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to be more responsible, and I'm going to care about the next generation of sons, as well as taking care of his wife, who, by the way, battled a lot of autoimmune diseases and other challenging things for her whole life. So props to my grandfather, just an incredible legacy of how he served, how he worked hard. And he also drew a line in the sand and said he was going to live a life following the ways of Jesus, do his best with what he knew, and really serve his family well. That's a whole other episode. We'll share more sometime, okay, with how his life impacted my father and me and even my kids still to this day.
Running a successful bridal shop can be challenging, but with the right support, it can also be incredibly rewarding. Hi, I'm Mindy Linscombe, founder of Bridal Owner Success School, aka Boss. After 17 years in the bridal industry, I've developed proven strategies that drive both positivity and profitability in your business. Through Boss, you'll receive insightful coaching, time-tested frameworks, and a community of bridal shop owners dedicated to helping each other succeed. Ready to boost your profitability and find more energy in your business? Visit bridalownersuccess.com and sign up for Boss today.
And I've just been thinking about him a lot, honestly. Like I can remember the stories, like I said, as we were driving around. I can remember the crazy stories he told about tying 2 calves, like cattle. He tied 2 tails together. If you want to hear the rest of the story, reach out on Instagram or on YouTube. I'll tell you the rest, offline. Pretty wild. But with that, I remember the stories, but I just remember all the moments, the everyday things as well, too. And so this is why I want you to create those intergenerational moments with your family in this season, right? I remember how he greeted us at his apartment when we went to see him. I remember I remember the scent. I remember the smells. I remember him taking coins from the vending machines he owned in our family businesses. And he had all these other things he could be doing, but he would make sure he poured the coins into this thing and it would filter in, and he would package up those coins and bring them to the bank just to eke out all of the revenue he could from different little sources of revenue in his business. Okay, and so it's the funny things, right, that we remember about our grandparents. But within that, it's also the storytelling. Okay, so back to that. Be sure to get your folks' stories on documented. You might be tempted to think like, okay, well the oldest are in their 60s or this or that. Like, don't let it be too late, friends. Make sure you get that stuff documented early on. You could always go back and do a version 2. God willing, if they live another 10, 20, or 30 years, right? And so be sure to start capturing some of that early. And if you want some help on questions or things to ask them, reach out. We've got a great list of intentional questions for you here. All right. Some other elements as you are looking at passing on stories. The stories really connect us to our roots. They remind us of who we are, where we come from. And with that, I think that we'd have a lot fewer identity challenges and issues. Again, it's not flawless, but I just see too many folks don't know where they came from. Too many folks don't know who they belong to and the strength that may be there in their family under the surface. And so, again, just this holiday season, I want to challenge you: ask a grandparent, ask a family member to share some deeper things and get beyond those surfacey conversations. So here's some other practical questions for you, folks, as we're looking at this. Ask the older generation about their childhood and growing up. Here's an easy one, right? Did you have a favorite toy, game, or hobby when you were young? Most people can remember that, right? And come up with an easy answer. This will get people going. What was the most mischievous thing you ever did as a kid? Now, my grandfather Orrin wasn't around to tell my kids about the crazy story and what he did. No, I'll never forget. But the other day we were at dinner and I said, "Hey, Dad, could you tell Brody," who's my second born, I was like, "Could you tell Brody about that story of what Grandpa did?" And you want to see a kid's eyes light up and see him paying attention, ask questions like that. So even you can get the next generation to pass on their parents' stories in fun ways like that. Another question: hey, what was your first job and how much did you get paid? What kind of music did you listen to growing up? What was your favorite song or band? By the way, I've seen a couple of friends lately taking their grown parents, the grandparents' age, to go to some of their favorite concerts or things at the Sphere in Vegas. I think it's beautiful, super fun to see people pouring in to their parents and blessing them with some fun memories, right? Do you have a childhood hero? Who inspired you when you were young? Here's some other questions about family history or stories. Who was the funniest person in the family? What did they do that made everyone laugh? Did anyone in the family serve in the military? What do you remember about them? So in my case, my mother's dad, he served in World War II. And so I was just all ears when they talked about those stories and other elements of his time. While he wasn't at Normandy on the day of all of the violence and the horror, he was there within a couple of weeks afterwards. And so just fascinating. And to see a little bit of the sand from Normandy in there hanging in a little bag in their kitchen on a push pin board. I'll never forget those things, right? So ask these good kind of questions. What was your wedding day like, and how did you meet grandma or grandpa? What's one story about your parents or grandparents that make you smile? Other things are wisdom and advice questions. What are some of the biggest life lessons you've learned? What's the biggest change you've seen in the world during your lifetime? What's the hardest thing you ever had to overcome, and how did you get through it? And here's some other questions, for holidays or celebration-focused things. What's your favorite holiday memory? What's the best gift you ever received as a kid? What's your favorite recipe or dish to eat during the holidays? Who taught you to make it? How do you want our family to remember holidays in the future? Okay? And then here's just some fun, imaginative questions. If you could relive one day in your life, what day would you choose and why? Or if you could have dinner with any person from history, who would it be? Another thing, I did this around a fire during the Thanksgiving season just recently, but I asked each of the grandparents, I said, hey, where were you on your 40th birthday? And what do you remember about it? And it was really fun because we got to hear stories about, how one spouse made it really special for the other, fun memories. We got to hear one say, I don't remember at all. So it started to help us kind of, start the conversation of what was going on during that time frame in 1994 or whatnot. But just ask your folks and your parents about some of those milestones, and you'll be amazed to see how, one, they're typically going to be eager to share. And then two, you'll learn more about your family, learn more about your heritage and things that won't come if you just talk about the latest game or how the team's doing, in the current season or whatnot. So as we wrap up today, if you are interested in a list and resource on questions like this, just contact us, comment in Instagram or on YouTube below with generational conversations, and we will get you a list of different elements to make your holiday even better. You can even put these things in your phone and have it on hand and make it really easy for you to be the star, if you will, behind the scenes, just to facilitate the beauty of different generations connecting under your roof or around your table or around your Christmas tree. But again, I want to remind you, be intentional as we do this. It's so important to seize those moments. Like if you look at your family and the different gatherings you have, I mean, some of you might be those folks where they gather every weekend. You have like, it almost feels like drudgery because it happens so often. And then other of you, it might be every couple of years where this happens, okay? You really need to look at these family gatherings not just as, okay, here we're doing another one, but really there is a limited amount of them that are going to happen in your lifetime. The clock is ticking for all of us on, hey, you've got X amount of these left. Really make the most of it. And I'm tempted, just like you are, to say, oh, I'm tired of this, or we've been cooking, or we've been preparing, and we finally got everybody here, and there's different emotions, and there's different expectations to manage and conversations. But how can you be like a ninja in the conversations and help lead well and bring up great conversation starters to bridge the gaps of generations, to pass on powerful stories, all right? So that's our challenge to you during this holiday season or any time of year. And why are we bringing this up? Well, at Something New Show, we want to help you with how to create a life worth celebrating. So whether you're working parents or entrepreneurs aspiring to be in those shoes or whatever aspect of life you're walking in, we want you to have a life worth celebrating. And multi-generational, healthy conversations and storytelling is a key part of that. So thanks so much for watching. If you would, leave a comment here on the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening. We'd love to hear what's your biggest takeaway from today and how you're going to put this into action in your life. So thanks for liking, subscribing, sharing this with a friend who would get something out of it. We'll see you next time here on the Something New Show. All the best. Cheers.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show, rate, review, and share with a friend. Also, follow The Something New Show on Instagram and Facebook. If you want a fuller experience, watch the show on YouTube to help you create a life worth celebrating.